My name is Ruta Sutkute. Merhaba. Today I'm at your university and will deliver the course of subjects as political communication technologies, as well as public relations, introduction to public relations, also intercultural communication. And I have a PhD degree in political science in the field of political communication. So I guess that today we have quite limited time, and we will start our course. Okay. So today we will talk about crisis communication in the digital age, and we will talk about crisis management, case studies of risk and crisis, digitalization, digital age, and so on. First of all, if there is a crisis, my question is what to do. And actually, there is no easily, let's say, answer what to do. So my question is, what is crisis communication in general? And 5 basic myths about crisis communication. So first of all, first myth to crisis communication is that it is a simple response to the crisis situation. The second myth is that it is simply communication with the media. The third myth is that usually media tries to show positive, or company, any organization tries to show positive things and trying to hide some negative information. The fourth myth is that your main audience is only, let's say, external audience, that you don't need to manage communication with internal audiences. And the fifth myth is that it's a one-way communication, one-way process. So why are traditional public relations not effective in crisis situations, and how to communicate in a crisis? In this picture, you can see nuclear plant, let's say, institution, and it is written in case of accident, break glass. And under the glass, you can see public relations. Actually, in this kind of situation, it's already too late to break the glass and to ask for public relation to come to help you, because it means that you have reactive communication instead of proactive communication. In the case of proactive communication, you would be already having a plan how to deal with that crisis. You would already have some kind of experience, a team, group of team members where you can already be prepared how to communicate with media and so on. So why it is important for organization to communicate effectively during the crisis? It's based on 3 main things. It is image, identity, and reputation. Actually, a well-chosen communication strategy can really mitigate those negative effects of crisis in an organization. So probably we will skip these answers. What is image? What is identity? And the most important thing probably it is reputation. But here in the pictures you can see one of quite famous crises which happened in Riga, in Latvia, but the Lithuanian company was responsible for this crisis. And we had, let's say, a shopping center in Riga, and the biggest fail was in 2013 when the roof collapsed and approximately 50 people died there. And what was wrong in this crisis communication, that Lithuanian company was saying that we are not responsible for that building. Another company were responsible for the management of the building and so on. But media has its own channels, and soon the truth has come out, and actually they were responsible for that management of that building and so on. So if we are talking about identity, so after this crisis, they had to change their slogan. Before it was thinking about everything or everything is thought about. So after 2013 crisis, they changed to everything what is needed you can find in this place and so on. So, but more than that, reputation is important, and reputation is, let's say, the consequence of image plus identity. And it's said that people have their experience by evaluating organizations' performance today and in the past, and reputation changes the slowest from all those three categories. And usually true reputation of organization will be tested during crisis situations, and they might even need to change their slogan, identities, even the branding styles and everything else. When we are talking about 4R, it means that relationships, reputations, responsibility, and response. Those 4R is quite important during crisis communication. And if we are talking about relations with audiences, so I already mentioned that proactive communication is very important. Proactive communication means that organizations are well prepared much before the crisis happening. They already have their crisis management team. They already have their crisis plan. They already well prepared their strategy, what they will do. And in the case of reactive communication, it means that they have nothing, they are not prepared, and they're trying to solve the crisis just now, doing what they have, and usually making lots of mistakes. If we are talking about reputation, so they can be affected negatively, but also they can be affected very positively if the organization is well prepared. Responsibility means that you need to show that you care, even when you are not responsible for that crisis. And if we are talking about response, so you need to react as soon as possible, answer the questions, be very sensitive, and do not ignore. So when organization faces a crisis, it must assess three main elements. So its audience, its type, and its stage. Later, we will talk about three stages. It's pre-crisis, crisis, and post-crisis stages. So first of all, if we are talking about audience, probably you might already know who is this person, and actually he's responsible for the theory of stakeholders. And it's a Freeman, quite famous, let's say, scientist, who presented that stakeholder theory of organization management. And he said that the last 40 years have seen great changes in our understanding of business in our lifetime. We have seen a remarkable pace of globalization. We have seen a revolution of, let's say, information technologies. We have seen nothing less than a fundamental shift in the story of business. And in 1984, he represented that stakeholder theory. And actually today we are more emphasizing the media, and we will talk about communication through media with the audience when we will be analyzing some cases today. So he emphasized those internal audiences or stakeholders and external audiences. For example, government, consumer, advocates, interest groups, environmentalists, and media included in it. And he's saying that during crisis, there are multiple audiences, and for which you need to send different messages. They need to receive different message, and also to, first of all, to identify those stakeholders. We also need to talk about emotional stability of the audiences and let's say to identify, to understand how much and what information needs to be sent to that specific audience. For example, groups with low emotional stability may reject the message you are sending and to demand for more information, more clear clarification, and so on. So we will move to the types of crisis. So first of all, crisis caused by external factors. For example, it might be terrorist attacks, robberies, accidents, and so on. So my question for you, I will try also to give you some questions. What event you see in the picture? Who is 7/7? July 7, 2005. So usually I'm like always giving answers. It looks like, but it's more related to the. It looks like, but how do you think who caused it? You are very close to it, but who caused it? I wish that it could be, but actually, unfortunately, it's not natural. But how do you think what caused it? Exactly. So in 2005, terrorist attacks in London, and it's called 7/7. Usually we know that 9/11 case, which is very popular, but here for suicide bombers struck London's transport network and killing 50 people, injuring over 700 of them. But later, let's say that the police was quite successful and they stopped those attacks, and their plan, let's say, didn't come out as they have planned. Crisis by origin. Crisis originated from within the organization. It can be some low quality products, transportation problems, and most often they arise from not correct, let's say, actions of organization. For example, low quality travel agency. What do you see in the picture? It's called Fire Festival. Maybe someone has heard about it. So in 2017, there was a fire festival, and here you can see the main person who was responsible for that fire festival. Actually, it had to be something very luxury, a very fancy musical, let's say, performances in Exhume Island. People were paying a huge money for traveling to that island. And in 2017, leaving attendees stranded and hungry, McFarland, the founder, also together with Ja Rule rapper, they were, let's say, police found they guilty, and they had the main organizer had to serve 4 years in the prison, and also was fined with $40 million for this festival. And actually, if you would be ever interested, you can find even a documentary about Fire Festival. It was created, I guess, in 2019 about this huge, let's say, kind of corruption and kind of a huge crisis, not being able to manage that fire festival, because people already, they were traveling to that Exhume Island. They paid huge, let's say, amounts of money, and they were promised to find luxury apartments, luxury food and everything. And what they found, you can see in the picture, it was tents. There was no food, there was no water. Later, the airport was closed. They even couldn't, let's say, escape from that island. The third crisis of origin would be disasters due to organizational misbehavior. So it can be improperly performed work, violations related to legal, let's say, regulations, and most often it's because of ethical norms. And what do you see in the picture? WikiLeaks, exactly. WikiLeaks. You can see Assange, Julian Assange, and in 2010, it was, let's say, a huge scandal when very secret information was released, and it was called as cables. Later, it began to call as WikiLeaks. And USA Department, let's say, shared secret information of 274 consulates, embassy, diplomatic agencies, and so on. And they also published a video from US military helicopter showing the killing of civilians in Baghdad, in Iraq, and that's why it drew a huge attention of the public, and that scandal developed. If we are talking about 3 stages of the crisis, so usually it's pre-crisis, crisis, and post-crisis situations. According to different authors, I'm using more Richardson in 1994, but also there are 4-stage model and 5-stage model, but usually they are including very similar aspects of crisis stages. So if we are talking about a response to a crisis, so how do you think what society is searching and what society is seeking to answer? What question they have? What society wants to know during the situation of any crisis? What do they want to know? Today, somehow usually I'm not using very sensitive topics. For example, during the coronavirus, I was never talking about management of coronavirus. During, let's say, after the earthquake in Turkey, I also trying not to use that example because usually it's still too sensitive and people have, let's say, lots of still emotions, feelings, and so on. But anyway, what society wanted to know during the crisis? What do you see in the picture? So society usually wants to know who is guilty, and who is responsible for that crisis. And it depends, the response also depends on who is guilty. Society tends to look for the ones who are guilty and tries to blame someone, no? It can be organization, it can be person, it can be government, it can be, I don't know, some agencies and so on. So it depends on 3 elements that, let's say, response on organizational stability, external or internal origin of the crisis, personal control, and so on. And actually, it's quite important if we are talking about external origin of the crisis. So when natural disasters happens, people tend to blame less, let's say, the government, less the organizations, and so on, because it's something they can't manage, But when the crisis occurs due to organizational misbehavior, let's say low quality of products and so on, so the society or consumers, they already know who is guilty, what to blame, and so on. So here you can see some examples from quite famous crises during the history of, let's say, United States. So here you can see accident in 2003, Space Shuttle Columbia, but later we also will see a Challenger. So here 7 astronauts were killed, and what is interesting that someone had to manage the crisis which occurred, and let's say quite panic of society. And here we can see another case in 1986. Shuttle Challenger broke after 73 seconds, and all 7 members were killed. So actually, let's say that organization is a victim, and usually it's due to natural disasters, intentional falsifications, flight of rumors, and so on. And also it can be those technical malfunctions, failure due to safety, insufficient employee safety, and so on. And now we will see, let's say, not all of those videos, but just to understand how it happened and how the President Reagan talked with the society during the moment of the crisis. So it's 1986 Challenger. So we already seen the, let's say, a huge tragedy, and President Reagan later talked with the society about this accident. So for, let's say, saving a little of our time, we will not continue watching, but later the President Reagan is mentioning all the people they have died in that space shuttle. They are saying that they are, let's say, expressing their condolences and so on. What is more important that today we will talk about image restoration strategies, and there are 5 of them. Denial, evading responsibility, reducing offensiveness, corrective action, and mortification. So if we are talking about the image restoration strategies, here in the picture you can already see a scapegoating, when people they are trying to find who is guilty or to shift the blame on someone else. So, okay. So we will continue talking about 5 main image restoration strategies, about denial, evasion of responsibility, reducing offensiveness, corrective actions, and mortification. And each of them, they have its own examples. So when we are talking about denial strategy, it means that the organization or company is saying that no, we are not responsible. And it can be simple deny or shift to blame. So simple denial means that organization denies its fault. They are saying that we are not guilty. And shift the blame, it means that they are blaming another organization or institution that they are responsible. And if the organization is truly innocent and they really know that they are not guilty, this strategy is acceptable and justifiable. But unfortunately, if organization is really guilty and they are saying that no, we are not guilty, media has its own channels to find the truth. And actually, let's say that it will not work. So what do you see in the picture?
Oh, Taliban crisis.
Exactly.
Population
Exactly. So it's
pills, right?
with cyanide, let's say. It was poison pills in 1982. 7 people died in USA, and they found quite huge amount of cyanide. And actually manufacturer was not to blame for the incident. And from the beginning, they said that no, we are not guilty. And later, despite the fact that organization was not guilty, they withdrew all products from the sale. It was approximately 31 million of packages throughout the country. And also they worked hand in hand with FBI. They even offering $100,000 reward for information. And later they faced some difficulties returning the product to the market and restoring, let's say, their image. So they offered triple lid of the package, tablets instead of capsules, discount coupons, new pricing, and so on. So I'm not sure should we watch a video or we might have some problems later.
Thanks, Pete and Robin.
Now there's no sound.
Extra strength Tylenol capsules laced with a cyanide are linked with 5 deaths in Chicago, and that number might be changed to 6. Some of the bottles from the affected shipment have been found in Florida. Eckerd Drugstores in Clearwater reports that they pulled them off the shelf within hours of hearing about the potentially deadly pills. But as Chris Abel reports, none have been found in Central Florida.
Poison control, can I help you?
For nearly 1 solid hour, nurses at the Orlando Regional Medical Center comforted fears of local residents. Callers had heard news that cyanide-contaminated Tylenol capsules had killed 6 people in Chicago. Authorities suspect sabotage. Here, nurses report no cyanide cases.
We are letting know what the number is, the lot number, and giving them some symptoms and just basically reassurance.
Across the Orlando area, stores check their extra-strength Tylenol stock. Many stores removed it, like stores in 31 other states. But here, some stores left the product, pending further word from their corporate headquarters. This bottle of Tylenol came from a box with a manufacturer's code that was different than the code reportedly contaminated. Upon checking, Eyewitness News discovered that no store in the Orlando area carried the contaminated bottles.
None of the merchandise we had in our stores matched the manufacturer code number that was supposed to be contaminated.
So why'd you pull it off the shelf?
Just to be on the safe side until we can find more information out on it.
The Tylenol manufacturer has recalled 93,000 bottles of the suspect lot. They were manufactured in August. Florida did receive some of those bottles. Medical authorities in Chicago are recommending that no one take the Tylenol capsule until authorities obtain more information. In Orange County, Chris Abel, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
Okay, So let's move to another case. What do you see in the picture? It also used the Nile strategy. 1993. So it's quite famous crisis related to Pepsi company and those syringe which was found in Diet Pepsi can in Washington. And a week later, the police got approximately 50 reports across the country. And actually later, it was found out that it's only rumors. It was not true. The company adopted a strong strategy of denial, and later they presented few videos through the media explaining how the process of canning, how they are processing it. Also, they filmed one video which was like, let's say, it looked like that it's from security cameras, how one woman is putting that syringe into the can, that people could understand that it was not their fault. And although the FBI arrested those criminals, the Diet Pepsi sales dropped by 2%. And actually for such a huge company, 2%, it's quite a big number. If we are talking about another case of denial, so those previous two, they accepted that denial strategy because they knew that they are not guilty. But if we are talking about this case, so it's Exxon case, Exxon crisis in 1989. And today we will see one video where after 35 years, still there is no life in that region. And why I'm showing this card also, you will know very soon. So an Exxon oil type tanker capsizes in Alaskan port, and it was spilling 37,000 tons of oil and making damage for more than 3,000 square kilometers. Over 1 million birds, some marine animals were killed, and actually 4 seasons people were cleaning their region, and the company, 40,000 Americans cut their credit cards and sent by post to this company. Let's say that that's how they showed resistance towards communication with the authorities from those Exxon company. And since the beginning, they denied the extent of environmental disaster as much as they could. They were hiding the truth. They didn't want even to take responsibility for cleaning this area. So for maybe 1 minute, we can watch a video after 30 years.
25 years after the Exxon Valdez oil spill, life has still not returned to normal. This year marks the 25th anniversary of the Exxon Valdez oil spill. The oil tanker struck Bligh Reef in Prince William Sound, Alaska in 1989, spilling more than 11 million gallons of crude oil into the water.
Every American is familiar with the tragic environmental disaster in Alaskan waters. And more than 10 million gallons of oil have been spilled, with deadly results for wildlife and hardship for local citizens. We all share the sorrow and concern of Alaskans and a determination to mount a sustained cleanup effort.
On March 24, 1989, shortly after midnight, the oil tanker Exxon Valdez struck a reef and began spilling oil into Prince William Sound, Alaska. The tanker was carrying the equivalent of more than 1.2 million barrels of crude oil and spilled more than 11 million gallons, or 257,000 barrels worth of oil. The amount spilled was roughly the equivalent to 17 Olympic-sized swimming pools. The spill posed a threat to local wildlife, including migratory shorebirds, dolphins, sea lions and whales. Alyeska, which represented 7 oil companies who operated in the area, opened cleanup communication centers in Valdez and Anchorage. However, the cleanup effort was hindered by the size of the spill and its remote location, which was only accessible by helicopter and boat. Alieska first assumed responsibility for the cleanup, and the national response team was activated soon after. 3 main methods were used to clean up the oil spill: burning.
So in the video, we have seen President of United States expressing their sorrow and saying that today we are facing this, let's say, national tragedy, and we are expressing our sorrow, and we will do everything to, let's say, to diminish that damage which was made and so on. But even few months ago, I have seen TV news, and it was a report from that Exxon Valdez area, from that Alaskan area. So still there is no life there. Still there is no, let's say, environmental, nature, marine, and so on. So the second strategy is evasion of responsibility. It means that organization says that we are partly responsible for the accident, and usually they can use one of 4 cases of that image restoration. So it's scapegoating. It means that organization saying that someone else is guilty or responsible. It was in that Maxima shopping center, let's say, crisis case. Defeasibility, they are saying that we are hardly understanding the situation. We still need some, let's say, evidences. It's somehow very unclear and so on. Blaming the situation. They are saying that, well, the conditions was like that, and we couldn't change. For example, here we can see Cadbury infested, worm-infested production in India, and later it was even in other countries. And also it can be good intentions. The organization says that they had motivation of good intentions, but unfortunately it happened as happened. So for example, in Lithuania, it was the case of liver transplantation. Usually people, recipients, they are waiting in the line, and unfortunately, due to, let's say, some kind of corruption or unethical behavior, that line was changed, and a person who already had to get those livers, who was first in the line, didn't get it. So one of the most famous examples of evasion of responsibility, it's Watergate scandal, which happened in 1972. 1974, Nixon already resigns from his office. And if we are talking about Watergate scandal, why it was important? Because it led to resignation of 37th President of the United States. And it was complex in Washington called Watergate, where Democratic National Committee had their headquarters. And 1972, 5 men were arrested by, let's say, because of breaking into offices in the Watergate complex. And later it was discovered that those 5 people were related to the administration of Nixon. And the media began referring to the incident as Watergate break-in or Watergate scandal. It included allegations of illegal wiretapping, of money laundering, of kind of injustice, let's say, and later it became known as Watergate scandal. And actually, why I'm showing this example, it's because the crisis led to significant changes of public perception into government and also the media. Because if not media, nobody would know about Watergate scandal, and the press coverage of the scandal led by 2 most famous journalists helped to establish, let's say, a new era of investigative journalism. And it remains as a defining moment in the history of USA. It serves as a reminder of the importance of upholding legal, ethical, standards in all aspects of organizational behavior. And for saving time, we will maybe at the end of the seminar, we will watch a video if you will have some time. So the media coverage was quite important. You can see the front pages of Washington Post. FBI finds Nixon aides sabotage Democrats. And what Nixon was saying, he was saying that the press is the enemy, the press is the enemy, the press is the enemy, the establishment is the enemy, the professors are the enemy, professors are the enemy. Write that on the blackboard 100 times and never forget it. 1972, he was still saying that I'm not responsible. I earned everything what I have today by being, let's say, by being quite famous politician, by having a huge experience in that political area and so on. Unfortunately, in 1973, his vice president resigns, and 1974, Nixon also decides to resign from the office. The third one is reducing offensiveness strategy, which means that organization is saying that the damage is not that large, and usually the strategy has more categories, but we will see few of them today. So what do you see in the picture? A crashed car. Maybe someone knows the model of these cars. Exactly. 2010. Yeah, it was related to the brakes. And in 2010, Toyota recall cars due to broken accelerators. And actually, many mistakes were made during the communication regarding the response to the crisis, lack of united position, lack of certainty. I think that when I will switch to video again, they will not see the problem. Okay, we'll try to manage. So they have made lots of mistakes, lack of united position, delays, lack of certainty, and so on. And just later, they recall several million of cars, and they were using positive image building strategy. And now we need to watch two videos. So I hope that you see them. The first video is related to the last call to 9/11, and it was Toyota driver's last call. And later, let's say that they didn't survive.
The 911 call lasted just 17 seconds.
We're going north 125. Our accelerator's stuck.
August 28, 2009. California Highway Patrol Officer Mark Saylor was driving his 13-year-old daughter Mahala to a soccer match in San Diego County. His wife Cleofe, a genetic researcher, was next to him in the passenger seat. Her brother, Chris Lestrea, behind Mark, was talking to a 911 operator, describing what would be the family's final moments.
We're going to 120 Mission Gorge. We're in trouble. We can't. There's no brake.
Okay.
Gorge, end freeway, half mile.
Okay, and you don't have the ability to, like, turn the vehicle off or anything?
We're approaching the intersection. Hold on. Pray.
Witnesses say the car appeared to be having problems. It had pulled over to the side of the road and seemed to be surging, almost as if it had run out of gas. Moments later, witnesses say it shot past at over 100 miles an hour. By the time it reached the end of this freeway, investigators say Mark Saylor had run out of time and options. The car slammed into the back of another vehicle, continuing straight through the intersection and hitting this embankment. Witnesses say the car went airborne, rolling over several times before landing in this dry riverbed and bursting into flames. The family died instantly, leaving behind relatives like cousin Joe Adal asking why.
It's absolutely.
So, and what Toyota CEO was saying after.
In the past few months, our customers have started to feel uncertain about the safety of Toyota's vehicle, and I take full responsibility for that. I would like to discuss what caused the recall issues we are facing now. Toyota has, for the past few years, been expanding its business rapidly. Quite frankly, I fear the pace at which we have grown may have been too quick. I would like to point out here that Toyota's priority has traditionally been the following. First, safety. Second, quality. Third, volume. These priorities became confused.
So, as you have seen, the CEO was saying that we are taking the full responsibility for the actions, and Toyota during the last few years, they were facing problems related to a huge, rapid, let's say, development due to they somehow misfollowed their the main principles they are working on, quality, safety, and so on. But unfortunately, they accepted that that it's their mistake a bit too late, and they had to do it much earlier. Also, there are some crises related to Red Cross, American Red Cross. It was minimizing negative impacts strategy, and in 2010, it was earthquake in Haiti. And the main problem with the organization and this crisis, it was that they received approximately 500 million from all those donations, but they built only 6 permanent homes. And due to some kind of corruption or other problems, those money they didn't reach victims of earthquakes and so on. Also, we can talk about minimizing negative impacts during 1963 after Martin Luther King. He was arrested during civil rights protests in Alabama, and here you can see how local police use those horses and attack dogs to let's say to catch those protesters and so on. And later the department issued a statement where they apologized for the use for that force and promised in the future to use more peaceful crowd control ways and so on. So the fourth one is corrective action strategy, and here we already can see a Texaco case. It's a racial discrimination case in 1994. The organization admits since the beginning its mistakes, and they are taking responsibility for avoiding these mistakes, let's say, in the future. So 6 Texaco African American workers, they accused company for racial discrimination, presenting audio records and, let's say, proofs about the situation. So what was organization response? They have taken full responsibility. They stopped work of those employees which were responsible for that discrimination. The director, let's say, or leaders visited all stores, and also they hired African American public relations company to solve issues in the future, and that they could, let's say, to help for their communication. Here we can see more cases which related in with 2008 Obama office. As we know, 2008 it was financial crisis and probably over the world, not only in the United States. So what he was doing, or what his administration was doing, they implemented a series of corrective actions to stabilize economy, to prevent those financial crises in the future, for example, troubled asset relief program and so on. And the government also launched a public relation campaign to explain those changes, let's say those actions to the public regarding government's intervention to the economy, their lives and so on. And the last one is mortification strategy. So it means that company already admits mistakes, humbles itself, and actually asks for forgiveness. So we have seen Odwalla food example. 1996, it was E. coli outbreak, and authorities said that in pasteurized juices, they found E. coli bacteria, and it caused the death of a child and sickness of 60 people, 20 lawsuits, and so on. And organization, since the beginning, they have communicated with media. They got involved in the management of the crisis. They tried to restore their image by taking out those products from sales, and they were also promised to pay all medical expenses for those who were affected by these products. And finally, today we will talk about 7 rules for risk communication according to EPA. EPA means Environmental Protection Agency in United States, and they were facing, let's say, many problems regarding Hurricane Catherine, Hurricane Sandy, and so on. And they were like improving their communication, their guidance, what to do in the case of crisis. So first of all, value the public and involve it as an equal partner. It means that the goal is to create a correct message and involve society, inform society in what they are interested. Also involve public from the beginning of the crisis, and also people must by themselves participate in decisions. But let's say that sometimes in reality it's not that easy as it sounds from the rules. Number 2, listen to the audiences. So usually don't make assumptions without any research related to audiences, and people usually care about trust, about credibility, about volunteering, empathy, and so on. And if people feel that they are very ignored, they will never accept your risk management strategy. They will feel like outsiders who has no information and so on. Number 3, work with trusted sources and be trusted yourself. So it also, let's say, depends on the media, but that credibility is a key aspect of communication, and public trust is very hard to gain, but very easy to lose. And usually long-term trust is based on what public remembers from the past, your mistakes from the past, and based on concrete actions. Number 4, be honest, sincere, and open. It means that openly name what is unknown, don't hide anything, notify the public immediately, don't keep anything by yourself, let's say in the silence, and also do not underestimate and do not exaggerate the crisis. During the, let's say, COVID-19, somehow in many countries, media was even increasing the fear instead of controlling the fear which was appearing in the society. So the number 5, respond to media needs. It is said that the media is more interested in politics than a risk, more in simplicity than complexity, and so on. So you need to be very open, easily accessible, respect their deadlines, provide information in various, let's say, content, video, photos, text, and so on. Also agree about what will be discussed with you during the interview. Also have few positive messages, few negative messages, and so on. And what is very important, to be proactive and be ready to react. What means proactive? You need to be ready in advance, but not to think what to do when the crisis already happened. Number 6, speak clearly and with compassion. It means that sympathy or empathy is very important. Use very clear, non-technical language. Usually officials, they are used to some technical language which society might not understand. You need to know the context by yourself. Respect norms, values, society norms, let's say, and also you should talk by giving some examples, stories, and so on, to talk positively, and don't exaggerate, but also don't mitigate or don't, let's say, underestimate the risk. And what is more, that you need to promise what you can do, but not to promise something which is impossible to implement. Number 7, be carefully planned and evaluate the actions. So actually it is said that different tasks, audiences, media, and so on, requires different communication tools. And usually it is very important that consistency in your communication, to plan what will be said, to plan what will be done, and so on. So that's was for, let's say, about our main topic regarding risk communication, but also I have a few tasks for the audience. So if we will not, let's say, answer all the questions, but at least I would like to ask you, have you ever heard about Sandy Hook crisis? Sandy Hook shooting crisis, 2012. But probably you already have heard that in the United States, each day, few shootings happening in schools and in other public institutions and so on. Approximately, I didn't check the newest data, but let's say in 2018, 19, 20, approximately it was 500, 600 shootings during the year happening in the United States. So in 2012, the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting happened, and 20-year-old person killed 26 people at school. Their old was between 6 and 7 years, and also it was adult staff members, and also before that he also killed his family member, and finally he also killed himself. So now we will see 2 short videos. So you will need to say what was the main, let's say, audience of that message you will hear, and what communication strategy was used. In the first video, you will hear, let's say, briefly description of what happened. But in the second video, you will see a social ad. And that social ad was created by Sandy Hook Promise organization. And Sandy Hook Promise Organization was created after this event in the United States. It's a non-governmental organization fighting against gun violence, against, let's say, working for gun control, gun prevention, and so on. And they are sharing content related to that gun prevention. And that second video will be a social ad which was created by that non-governmental organization to increase public understanding what could be done, what hasn't done regarding that Sandy Hook shooting event in 2012. So first video, it's about, let's say, basic information about tragedy.
This day, when a searing tragedy struck in a place parents felt their children were safe. The worst grade school shooting in U.S. history, at least 27 dead, 20 children, 7 adults, including the principal. And the gunman killed himself. And all over this town, in churches like the United Methodist Church behind us, well, the lights are on. They are still open for prayer tonight.
And they will be all night. People have been gathering here for prayer, to lean on each other and lean on a belief in something bigger than themselves, to help get through what is just impossible to believe here or anywhere else. The sentiment here echoed in what you're seeing now down by the Washington Monument in D.C. Many members of the Connecticut delegation was there, but this story is really about their home here, Newtown, Connecticut, just 27,000 people. This is a place where people know each other, families know each other. And what happened today is known by all. And it's not just about how many were lost, it's about the age. What is hitting everyone so hard is the reality of these being children that were targeted by a madman. We now know his name. We know he's 20 years old, Adam Lanza. We know that before he came to this school, he shot his own mother, Nancy, in the face, killing her at her home. The looming question is why this man then decided to come to this school. He shows up at a place where they're making gingerbread houses in preparation for the holidays and Christmas presents. Just kids. A man in black enters with a vest and multiple weapons and begins a massacre. It was a clear, crisp, and trouble-free start to the morning at Sandy Hook Elementary School. Kids like Ella Sievers and her mother Amy,
just do the elk dance,
eager for the weekend and the holidays to arrive.
So for saving time, let's say we will not continue, but you already understood, let's say, the context and so on. But more than that, I would like to show you that social ad which was created by Sandy Hook Promise Organization.
Got some news today from the radio man. He spoke the words somber and as softly as he can. The world stood still and the sky opened up. I made my way to fill up my coffee cup. Then it occurred to me as the daylight sky shone blue, today's the day that Johnny met June. He waited a while, he knew that he would. He was gonna hang around here for as long as he could. The days went by, and hours idle passed. He was never sure just how long he would last. But there's not much love in a lonely room. Today's the day that Johnny met June.
Have a good summer.
You too.
Thanks.
Hey, you must be bored.
No way.
This is the guy that I was running to in the library.
You're kind of
yeah.
guilty.
Oh my God.
So you like to write on desks?
Yeah, that's what I do.
Now we're starting over. It's the place that we are. You look more pretty underneath all the stars of love. Is a burning thing. Oh, how I still love to hear you sing. Oh, and everything we ever heard about heaven is true. Today's the day that Johnny met June. Today's the day that Johnny met June.
So here you can see that Sandy Hook Performance Organization, which is, let's say, working on prevention of gun violence and so on. Let's say it might be debatable, does it really work, how it works and so on, but let's say that social ads, it's one of the way to let's say to get some kind of attention from the public, to increase the knowledge and so on. And still I have at least one task for the audience, as you already hear today. So you need to imagine that you are a crisis management team assembled by the Ankara or Istanbul Airport Board with the task of creating a crisis management and communication strategy for airport. But for the first, you have met for the first time, and the main purpose is to discuss and to identify the main possible crisis, what should be included in the crisis management and communication strategy. So first group should use SWOT, which means strengths, weakness, opportunities, threats and so on, analysis tool. And the second group, we should use PEST analysis tool, which means political, economical, social, and technological categories of analysis. So at least you need to identify what are potential crises. What could be the potential crisis? How do you think regarding the crisis management plan of actually any airport? But let's say let's choose any of airports in Turkey. So what could be crisis, potential crisis? Yeah, for example, attack. It might be terrorist attack or like any attack. What else? Natural disasters. Huh? What else? And if we are talking about internal crisis, what it could be? What, for example, usually happens in France? Yeah, or for example, it's usually protesting, you know, like protests that airport will be closed, that it will not work, the flights will be delayed, and so on. What else? What does it mean by hijack? Yeah, it also might be, but it can be also related to attacks. Yeah, it can be. And during the last few years, few happened actually in the world. If we are talking about that Malaysian airport, the airplane and so on, that's true. What else?
Which criteria define the crisis?
Which criteria? So actually you need to evaluate all those political, economical, technological, and social, let's say, criteria.
For airport?
Yeah, for airport, for example, if we would talk about political, so it can be also related to some protests regarding the employees and so on, or political situation in general in the country, if we are talking about some.
landing to any other
Yeah, actually, approximately 1 year ago, 1.5, we had a huge, let's say, crisis that it was the plane had to land in Lithuania, and in that plane there was Belarus protester, let's say, or very famous journalist, who was actually who wasn't allowed to leave Belarus, and but somehow they found illegal ways to find him. And while he was traveling in the plane, that plane was it had to land in Vilnius airport, but those pilots, they got instruction that they need to land in Minsk as soon as possible. And that journalist later was arrested because of, let's say, regime. He was considered as a terrorist, or how it's called, for the regime of Belarus and so on. So actually, later it was discussed a lot, this case, because I mean, nobody has the right suddenly to change the direction of the plane where it has to land and so on. But and still investigation is continuing, and still the reasons are not very well known why the pilots decided to change the direction and to land in Belarus. And of course, that journalist is he was more working as, let's say, in exile. He was resisting to the regime in Belarus. He was, let's say, against the government. He was sharing content regarding to that regime in Belarus, and he was considered as a person not welcomed, or if he would come to Belarus, he would be arrested. And as far as we know, he was arrested, but he had that arrest at home. But now we still don't know that information is true or not. So that's quite, let's say, it was a huge scandal, especially for politicians, because Lithuania is somehow supporting a lot, let's say, some kind of democratical values, and are quite against Belarus, against Russia, and especially during this war in Ukraine period and so on. And if we would be answering the previous question about those categories, so usually when people defining the crisis, they are trying to analyze economical factors regarding to protests, to low income, low, let's say, salaries of the workers, and so on. If we are talking about technological tools, so technological aspects, it would be even some kind of, let's say, as you said, hiking, and also it could be just like not working properly, not working systems of the airport, of planes, or something like that. So actually, it's quite hard to identify those risks, but that's what crisis communication, crisis management team is doing by trying to identify those risks, by trying to prepare crisis management plan, and so on. So I think that for today, as our time is finishing, I still would have one task for you, but let's say that you can think about it later. So you need to imagine that a small university in any country is inviting you your crisis management and communication team, following that recent tragedy, let's say, where several students were shot, or let's say even professors or something like that. And the university needs the crisis management strategy. So you should think how could they form their own crisis management team So, I mean, who should be included or involved in this team, and what training might be required. So probably we can talk about people from the management of university. We could talk about the media relations specialists. We could talk even about psychologists. We can talk even representatives of students, representatives of students' families, and so on. And finally, I decided that maybe today we will not talk about the crisis of 2023, because in my opinion, it's still a bit sensitive to talk about it. So maybe we still need to wait until better days will come, or let's say that many problems will be solved. So just I had some, let's say, few questions regarding earthquake in Turkey and how it was responded, who was guilty or not guilty, how the government reacted, how fast it was, and so on. But what I would like to say, that the public must be involved in process before final decisions are made, and nobody likes to approve something that has already been determined or accepted by the organizers. So thank you for your attention today, for participating in this seminar about crisis communication and media relations. So thank you.